At this age, you no longer have the luxury of wasting time. You've spent decades following rules you didn't write, carrying burdens that weren't yours, and putting your own life on hold for the sake of others. But tell me, what was it all for? How much of that sacrifice was truly appreciated? There comes a point when certain things just stop making sense. Waiting for recognition from those who will never give it. Enduring relationships that only drain you. Staying silent to avoid making others uncomfortable. But for how long? If you keep living on everyone else's terms, one day you'll wake up and realize you've run out of time to live on your own. Today we're going to talk about 10 things that simply stop making sense after 60. And let me warn you, the last one will shake you to your core. Because if you still think you can afford to put off important decisions, this message will make you see that you might already be running out of time. I'm Celia, and I'm here to say what no one else dares to. Stay until the end, because this video just might be the turning point you've been needing. How much longer are you going to wait for others' approval to live your own life? Seeking permission to live the way you want is one of those invisible chains that have bound you for decades without you even realizing it. Since childhood, you were taught to be obedient, to follow rules, to avoid causing discomfort, to stay quiet. Then you grew up and started asking for permission for everything, to fall in love, to make decisions, to change direction. And now, after 60 years, are you still waiting for someone to tell you that you're allowed to be free? Look around you. How many times have you wanted to do something but held back because you worried about what your children, your siblings, your friends, or society might think? Maybe you want to travel alone, dress differently, move to a new city, pick up an old hobby, or simply start saying no to things you no longer want to do. But there you are, waiting for someone to give you the green light, as if you still owed the world an explanation for every step you take. The worst part? Most of the time, you don't even realize you're still trapped in that mindset. You've been conditioned to doubt your own choices, to seek validation for every move. And the most tragic part is this: if you don't break free now, you never will. Think about this. Imagine an old man who always dreamed of learning to dance but never did because his wife laughed at the idea. Now she's gone, and he's still sitting in the same chair, watching others move, convinced it's too late to try. Or the woman who always wanted to travel, but her children told her it was dangerous, that it didn't make sense at her age, that she should stay home and take care of the grandchildren. Now the grandchildren have grown up, they have their own lives, and she's still sitting by the same window, watching the days pass without ever seeing the world she once dreamed of. Do you see how cruel this is? It wasn't their age that stopped them. It was the mental chains, the voices of others, the fear of being a burden or being judged. Here's what you need to understand. No one is going to give you permission to be happy. No one is going to put you on a pedestal and say, "All right, now you can do whatever you want." If you keep waiting for that validation, you'll reach the end of your days with the bitter realization that you lived for others, never for yourself. And the most ironic part, many of the people whose opinions controlled your decisions won't even stop to think about what you sacrificed for them. They move on with their lives while you remain trapped in a cage that only exists in your mind. You don't need permission to live the way you want. You don't have to justify your desires or explain every decision you make. If you want to change something, do it. If you want to let go of something, let it go. If you want to start over, start. Because life won't wait for you. And if you don't take control now, you'll end up as a shadow of the person you once dreamed of becoming. Taking control of your life also means letting go of what no longer serves you. But here's where many people go wrong. They think making changes is just about taking new steps forward, when in reality, it also means releasing what's holding you back. And that brings us to the second key point of this video: holding on to relationships that are already dead. If there's anything that ages faster than the body, it's a broken relationship. Yet so many people cling to those who no longer value them, no longer respect them, and no longer have a place in their lives beyond habit or fear of being alone. How many times have you stayed in a relationship simply because of shared history? He's my son, I can't distance myself. She's my sister, we have to stay close. He's my husband, we've been together for so many years, how can I walk away now? And just like that, excuse after excuse, you force yourself to keep alive a connection that has already died. You do it because you believe it's the right thing to do, because you were taught that family is forever, that marriage is sacred, that friendship should never be abandoned. But here's the truth no one wants to tell you. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. Some expire. Some only survive through unfair sacrifices. Some become a burden that robs you of your peace. Stoicism teaches us that life is about accepting what is, not what we wish it were. But many people your age remain stuck in toxic relationships because they can't accept that someone they loved is no longer the same person. Or worse, that they never were who they thought. They keep waiting for their children to change and appreciate them, for their spouse to regain the love they lost, for an old friend to be who they used to be. But reality is clear. If someone doesn't respect you today, they won't tomorrow. If someone treats you with indifference now, they won't suddenly wake up one day with a newfound gratitude for everything you've done. Waiting for that is self-inflicted torture. And the worst part, the time you keep pouring into these dead relationships is time you could be using to build something new. That doesn't mean you have to replace every loss with another person, but can you imagine the peace you'd feel if you stopped forcing what no longer works? There are people who have never lived a single day in true freedom because they've spent their entire lives tied to someone who makes them feel small, guilty, or never enough. People who have spent decades listening to criticism, carrying the weight of others' happiness, and absorbing the frustrations of those around them. Is that really the life you want to keep living? This isn't about becoming cold or cutting people off without reason. It's about recognizing that some relationships drain you more than they fulfill you. That some people no longer add to your life, they take away from it. And if you don't make the choice to let go now, you'll spend the rest of your life dragging emotional corpses behind you. And here's the hardest truth. Some of the most toxic relationships aren't with distant friends or acquaintances. They're with your own children, your partner, your siblings, the very people you were taught you should never walk away from. But love without respect isn't love. Family without consideration isn't family. And companionship without joy is just a prison. Holding on to relationships that have already died is denying yourself the right to live with dignity. It's chaining yourself to what once was, but no longer is. It's a trap that will only lead to frustration, bitterness, and emotional exhaustion. And the cruelest part, while you're still there, trying to hold together something broken, the other person has already moved on, without ever looking back. Holding on to dead relationships is a waste of life, but there's something even worse: living in fear of what others think. And that brings us to the third point in this video, where things start to truly shift. Because if you don't break free from this, everything else falls apart. The fear of other people's opinions is one of the heaviest chains you can carry. You've spent decades wondering if you're doing the right thing according to their rules. What will my family say if I sell my house and move into a smaller place? What will my kids think if I dare to date at this age? How will people judge me if I decide I'm done taking care of those who never took care of me? And while you wait for their approval, life slips away. You become a prisoner of expectations that aren't even yours, trapped in a cage built from other people's opinions. Stoicism says it plainly: if you live by the opinions of others, you will never be free. And that's where the practical strategy you need to start using today comes in. It's called the last day test. Here's how it works. Every time you feel tempted to make a decision based on fear of what people will say, ask yourself one simple question. If today were the last day of my life, would this opinion really matter to me? If the answer is no, then it's not worth holding you back. If the answer is no, then the only thing that matters is what you think, what you feel, what you decide. Imagine a 70-year-old woman who has spent her entire life pleasing her family. She's always been the one who's available, the one who says yes without thinking, the one who puts her own desires aside to avoid making waves. One day, she decides she wants to take a solo trip, but right away, the voices start. How can you travel alone at your age? Something could happen to you. That's not for someone like you. Fear begins to creep in. She almost gives in. She almost lets it go. But then, before she says no, she asks herself, if this were my last day on Earth, would I really care what my kids think? And in that moment, it clicks. People will always have something to say, but her life belongs to her. The power of this strategy is that it forces you to shift your perspective. It pulls you out of immediate fear and places you in the only moment that truly matters, the end of your life. And when you look at things from that angle, you realize that most of the worries holding you back today have no real significance. People forget, people judge and move on. But you are the one who will have to live with the decisions you made, or the ones you were too afraid to make. And here's where many people fail, because even when they manage to stop caring about other people's opinions, they fall into another, even more dangerous trap, becoming everyone else's lifesaver. Before we go on, let me know in the comments, have you ever felt like fear of judgment has held you back? Tell me where you're watching from, and let me know if you're ready to start living without asking for permission. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if this message is resonating with you, because what's coming next might be the very thing that's been holding you back without you even realizing it. When you finally break free from the weight of others' opinions, you come to a startling realization. Many of the things you did weren't really for you, but to fit into everyone else's world. And this is where many people fall into an even more dangerous trap, becoming the lifeline for grown children and adult family members. This is the fourth point in this video, and probably one of the most costly mistakes you can make at this stage of your life. You were made to believe that love means sacrifice, that the role of a parent or an older sibling never ends, that you must always be available for others, no matter how much it drains you. You've spent decades making sure your children, your siblings, your nieces and nephews, even your partner, are okay. And every time someone needed you, you were there. But what happens the moment you decide to put yourself first? The unthinkable, they call you selfish. Because deep down, many don't see you as a person with your own needs, but as an endless resource. And the worst part? You believed it too. Here's the mental trap. Thinking that saying no is the same as abandonment. Society has conditioned you to feel guilty if you don't drop everything when someone needs you, even when that person has never lifted a finger for you. And that's how you end up solving problems that aren't yours, carrying responsibilities that others should handle, and sacrificing your peace to support people who refuse to stand on their own 2 feet. But here's the truth. Helping is not the same as carrying. You can guide, you can support, but you cannot live someone else's life for them. And you especially shouldn't do it at the expense of your own. Look around. How many parents have drained their savings bailing out irresponsible adult children? How many grandparents have ended up raising their grandkids because their own children refuse to take responsibility? How many people are still supporting siblings who never made an effort to be independent? And meanwhile, those same people go on with their lives, without a care, because they know that no matter what happens, you will be there to fix it. The consequence of this mistake is devastating. One day, you wake up and realize there's nothing left for you. No money, no energy, no dreams of your own. Just deep exhaustion and the bitter realization that you spent your life taking care of others while no one took care of you. And the cruelest part, when you can no longer help, many of those who depended on you will disappear. Because it was never about love, it was about convenience. This is where you have to ask yourself a hard question. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life putting out fires that other people started? Or is it finally time to let go of that burden and start living with dignity? If you don't make this decision now, one day you'll look back and realize you gave everything away and you were left with nothing. If you've spent your life sacrificing for others, one thing is almost certain. You've also spent your life putting off the things you always wanted to do. This is the fifth point in this video, and perhaps one of the saddest mistakes of all. Because as the years passed, as you solved everyone else's problems, as you waited for the perfect moment, your own dreams got buried under excuses, obligations, and fear. How many times have you told yourself, when I have time, when the kids grow up, when I retire, when things settle down? But that moment never came, because there was always something more urgent, something that seemed more important than your own happiness. And now, at 60, 70, or even 80, you realize that life didn't wait. And if you don't make a decision now, it still won't. There is no more later. The only time you have is this one. Putting off what you truly want doesn't just steal experiences from you, it steals respect. Because when you always put yourself second, others do the same. If you never stood up for your own desires, if you were never firm about what you wanted, how can you expect others to take you seriously? It's not just about the trips you never took, the hobbies you never picked back up, or the changes you never dared to make. It's about an entire life where you were a spectator instead of the main character. And that's what weighs the heaviest when you look back. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You can still do something about it. Not with empty promises or cheap motivational speeches. The time you have left is pure gold, but only if you decide to use it. The difference between a life filled with regrets and a life lived with dignity is simple. Stop waiting for permission. Stop depending on external circumstances and start acting now. If you want something, do it now. If you dream of learning something new, start today. If you long to change your surroundings, stop making excuses. It's not about money, age, or luck. It's about choice. Because even if time has passed, even if you don't feel as strong as you once were, there is always something you can do. The real problem? Most people give up before they even try. They convince themselves that it's too late and settle into the comfort of, it doesn't matter anymore. Look at anyone who has lived into their 80s or 90s and ask them what they regret. They won't say they wish they had worked more, saved more, or been more cautious. They'll tell you they regret what they didn't do, the chances they didn't take, the dreams they let slip away, the life they could have lived but never did. Don't become one of those people. Don't let fear of the unknown be stronger than the fear of wasting what time you have left. The perfect moment is never going to come. The best day to start living is today. And if you don't do it now, get ready to carry the weight of knowing that you could have, but didn't have the courage to try. If you keep putting off the things you've always wanted to do, there's something else you need to face. The pointless burden of holding on to material things that only weigh you down. This is the sixth point in this video, and probably one of the hardest to accept. Because we're not just talking about objects, we're talking about everything you're dragging through life without a real purpose. Close your eyes for a moment and picture your home, your room, your closets, your entire life, buried under piles of things you barely use but refuse to let go of. Old furniture no one wants, clothes you haven't worn in years, keepsakes from people who don't even call anymore, drawers stuffed with useless papers, shelves covered in dusty decorations, boxes filled with just-in-case items you don't even remember owning. This isn't just physical clutter, it's emotional baggage. Because every object you hoard for no reason is an anchor tying you to a past that no longer exists. The problem is that many people confuse security with accumulation. They think that the more they have, the safer they'll be. that a house full of things means a life full of meaning. But the truth is quite the opposite. Clinging to material possessions is clinging to an illusion. What's the point of a closet full of clothes you never wear? Why hold on to furniture that only takes up space? Why keep reminders of people who hurt you? The weight of your belongings is the weight of decisions you never made, changes you avoided, and fears you refused to face. Now, imagine another scene. Your family, after you're gone, trying to figure out what to do with all of it. Opening boxes you never opened, throwing away papers you kept for no reason, sorting through a lifetime of things you never had the courage to let go of. Is that what you want to leave behind? A museum of meaningless objects? A house full of clutter that only reflects your fear of moving on? Because that's what this really is. Fear. Fear of change. Fear of letting go. Fear of accepting that everything has a cycle. The only way to break free is to clear it out. Not just your home, but your life. Getting rid of what no longer serves you is an act of liberation. It's not about throwing things away for the sake of it. It's about asking yourself, with brutal honesty, does this truly serve me? Does it bring me peace? Or does it take up space? Do I keep it because I love it, or because I'm afraid to let it go? The answers to those questions will determine whether you live light or spend the rest of your life carrying weight that no longer makes sense. But there's something even worse than holding on to material things. Holding on to people who don't respect you. And that is a burden you need to release. Letting go of material things is an act of freedom, but there's something even more urgent you need to leave behind. The toxic habit of tolerating disrespect just because you're afraid of being alone. This is the 7th point in this video, and perhaps the most painful of all, because it requires looking in the mirror and accepting the truth. If you keep allowing people to walk all over you, it's not their fault, it's yours. At this stage of life, you should have already learned that respect is not something you beg for. That someone who disrespects you once will do it again. That people who belittle you won't suddenly change, no matter how long you wait, no matter how much you explain, no matter how hard you try to prove your worth. And yet, here you are, justifying the unjustifiable, enduring humiliations, turning a blind eye to insults, pretending it doesn't hurt when someone speaks to you with disdain or ignores you like an old piece of furniture sitting in the corner of their life. And the worst part, you do it because you're afraid of being alone. How many times have you stayed in relationships that no longer make sense? Endured the coldness of ungrateful children, accepted hurtful words from siblings who only reach out when they need something, maintained friendships with people who only use you. And every time they treat you like you don't matter, you tell yourself that this is better than nothing, that it's better to take whatever scraps of companionship you can get than to sit in an empty house in silence. But let me tell you something. True loneliness is not being alone. It's being surrounded by people who don't value you. And if you don't understand that now, you will when it's too late. When you realize that the respect you never demanded never arrived. When you finally accept that the people who pushed you aside will never turn around to pick you back up. When you look back and see that you spent years allowing others to treat you like you were nothing. This is where you have to make a choice. You cannot keep living in fear. You cannot keep letting the fear of loneliness be stronger than your dignity. If someone doesn't respect you, they don't deserve a place in your life. Period. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter how many years you've known them. It doesn't matter if it hurts to walk away. Because what truly hurts, what truly destroys you, is continuing to accept disrespect just because you think you're nothing without them. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you knows you need a change. Because you see yourself reflected in these words, and because deep down, you know that every day you keep allowing what doesn't serve you is a day wasted. So tell me, are you going to keep waiting for things to magically change? Or are you finally going to make the decision to put yourself first for the first time in your life? If you've made it this far, you're probably already feeling the weight of everything you've allowed. The things you've given without receiving. The decisions you've postponed until they became impossible burdens to let go of. And now, just as you're starting to see things clearly, the biggest obstacle of all appears: resistance to change. This is the 8th point in this video, and it's time to talk about something that has kept you trapped for years, following rules that no longer apply to your life. You've spent your life abiding by rules someone else wrote for you. You were told how to be, what was right, what was expected of you. You were taught to put others first, to prioritize duty over desire, to believe that being good meant sacrificing yourself. And without realizing it, you spent decades obeying without question, as if those rules were unbreakable, as if you had no right to decide for yourself. But tell me something, have those rules actually made you happy? Or have they only kept you trapped in a life that doesn't feel like your own? This is where most people stop. Just when they start to see the truth, the excuses show up. But it's always been this way. I can't change at my age. It's too late to do things differently. And with every excuse, they lock themselves deeper into a prison of their own making. Because let's be honest, change is scary. Breaking away from what you've always known, even if it's hurting you, takes courage. But holding on to outdated rules just because they've always been there, that's not wisdom, that's fear. The rules you were taught may have served a purpose once, maybe at a different stage of your life, but if they only weigh you down now, if they do nothing but limit you, then those are rules you need to break. Who decided that at your age you can't make new friends? Who said that after 60, your life should revolve around everyone but yourself? Who made up the idea that you no longer have the right to enjoy, to choose, to change direction? All of these are rules imposed by a society that would rather see you grow old quietly, without disrupting the status quo, still useful to others, but never fully living for yourself. If you keep obeying these rules without questioning them, all you're really doing is giving up the time you have left. Because here's the truth. No one is going to come and tell you that now you're allowed to be free. No one is going to give you permission to break away from what no longer serves you. Either you decide to do it, or you stay trapped until the very end. And the end comes faster than you think. Breaking free from outdated rules is an act of necessary rebellion. But if there's one thing that can ruin it all, it's the ridiculous idea of waiting for the perfect moment to be happy. This is the 10th point in this video, and this is where you need to understand something fundamental. Happiness is not a destination you reach when everything falls into place. It's a decision you make now or never. A lot of people try to change. For a moment, they dare to set boundaries, to say no, to let go of what weighs them down. They feel determined. They swear that this time will be different. But then life keeps moving. Fear creeps in. Discomfort sets in. And they retreat. They go back to putting things off. They go back to giving in to others. They go back to waiting for the right time to do what they really want. And just like that, time keeps slipping away, stealing a life they never had the courage to fully live. Let me tell you something. The perfect moment does not exist. It never has. There will never be a day when everything lines up perfectly, when all your worries disappear, when the circumstances are ideal for you to finally dare to be happy. If you keep waiting for life to make room for you, you'll die waiting. Because life doesn't adjust to you. You have to move, take action, and claim what you want. No excuses, no delays, no asking for permission. If you really want to hold on to this change, there's one simple but brutally effective strategy. Stop overthinking and act. Don't sit there weighing the pros and cons. Don't wait for approval. Don't wait until you feel completely ready. Decide and do it. You want to travel. Buy the ticket. You need to cut ties with someone who disrespects you. Make the call now. You want to start something new? Start today. Because happiness is not something that comes to you. It's something you grab from the world with both hands if you have to. And if you don't do it now, then don't lie to yourself. It's not that you can't. It's that deep down, you're not willing to pay the price of being free. The difference between people who die with a smile and those who fade away full of regret isn't about what they had, what life gave them, or whether they were lucky. It's about who dared and who kept waiting. So tell me, which side do you want to be on? Because here's the truth, time keeps moving, and if you don't take control now, one day you'll wake up and realize it's already too late. If you've made it this far, it means you have something most people don't, the courage to hear what others prefer to ignore. Not everyone is willing to face reality without sugarcoating or empty comforts. But now that you have, there's a choice in front of you. You can keep living the way you always have, justifying what steals your peace, postponing what truly matters, waiting for a moment that will never come. Or you can start truly living. No one is going to do it for you. No one is coming to pull you out of where you are. Only you can take control and decide that whatever time you have left will belong to you and no one else. I won't lie to you, this isn't easy. Breaking free from years of habits, guilt, and imposed expectations doesn't happen overnight. But every single day you continue living by someone else's rules is a day you will never get back. And the time you have is not unlimited. If there's one thing you take away from this video, let it be this. Stop waiting. Don't make excuses. Don't lie to yourself. If something in your life no longer makes sense, let it go and move forward. I want you to write one sentence in the comments that sums it all up. The time is now. Tell me where you're watching from, and let me know if this message resonated with you. I want to hear from you. I want to know if you're ready to take action, or if you'll keep waiting for a permission that will never come. I'm Celia, and this is House of Wisdom, a space for those who have decided to wake up and live with dignity. If this message made you think, subscribe now and become part of a community of people reclaiming their independence, their respect, and their freedom. And this conversation doesn't end here. Watch the videos on the screen, because if you thought this was a wake-up call, what's coming next might be the reality check you still need.